Okay, so we did our budget in Excel, and now we're going to use Excel to find averages. And what we're doing is we're going to end up doing weighted averages so that we can figure out our grades. But we're going to start with a regular average. So normally, like let's say you rounded up all your friends and you want to know what your average height is. So let's say I have 13 friends. These are all their heights in inches, and I could average them. Well, on a normal average, you would add all these up and then divide by the number of terms. Well, so there are 13 different heights, so I'm going to add those up and divide by 13. That's the normal average. But, this is Excel. We don't want to have to do all that. That's a lot of work. I would have to do equals, sum, blah, blah, blah. Too much. I want to make it do it for us. So in this case, I'm going to type average just so I know what I'm doing. Or maybe I'll make it prettier. Average. Possibly spell it right. That's the reason I don't teach English. There we go. So I want to make Excel do this for me because I don't want to have to do that. That's the whole point of using Excel. So go equals. And, average is a fairly common thing. So there is a built-in formula. So I just type average. Ta-da, look, it pulls it right up. I'm going to do open parentheses. And now it's wanting me to put in all the numbers that I'm averaging. And it always highlights or it makes dark what it wants first. So it says number 1. So normally, I could click on all these individually and separate it by a comma, but I don't want to do that. Again, too much work. I'm going to click on this first one. I'm going to click and hold and highlight all of these. So notice it says B3 colon B15. That means it's taking all of these terms and it's going to average those, just like we did with the sum. I'm going to close parentheses. And ta-da! Our average height is 65 inches, 65.69 inches. So like 5'5.5" or so. So that's a normal average. And that's all fine and good, but a lot of times I don't want a normal average. I want other things, right? For instance, grades. Like if I'm looking at grades, it's not all worth the same. Like, so this one, each one is the same importance as everything else. That's why we're able to just add them up and divide by the number of them. But with grades, they're worth different things. So like with my grades, we have to do what's called a weighted average. So let's say at your school, homework is worth 40%. I'm going to widen out this column because it's a little narrow. So I'm going to go ahead and widen it out. Remember we did that before. And let's say this is worth 40%. I'm going to type 40. I'm going to go ahead and put percent. You'll see why in a second. Let's say my tests are worth 20%. Oh, but I need to put my percent, right? 20%. Oh, not 205. No, 20%. Shift 5. There we go. And then let's say you have quizzes go into that, and quizzes are worth like 10%. And then let's say, so that gets us up to 70, right? Let's say participation. Let's say my school is big on participation. It's worth like 30% of my grade. If I add those up, it should equal 100%. Let me test real quick. So equals sum. If I add them up, 100%. Okay, that makes sense because this represents every single grade that you can get, right? If it is less than 100%, means you're missing something. I'm going to get that out of the way. Or if it's over 100%, means you've got too much in there, right? Got to adjust. So this is what they're actually worth. So homework grades are worth more than quiz grades. They're worth more than everything else, right? Some classes, this is different. Some classes, this is like 20%. And this is 40%. So your tests are worth more than everything. Sometimes your test will be like 80% and everything else is worth a tiny amount. Or in some schools, you only just have a test grade. It just kind of depends on the school. But let's say this is what it has. And then let's say these are your grades so far, your average for each category. So on average, I have a 95 on my homework grades. I have, let's say, an 85 on my test grades. My quiz grades, I did pretty good. And I was really good. I participated all the time, but I got like a 97 because one day, I was talking. Okay. If I want to average these, I can't just add them up and divide by 4. There are 4 grades. But I can't just add them up and divide by 4 because we have to take into account somehow that tests are worth more than everything else, right? So everything is worth different things. So there are a couple ways you can do this. One way you can think about it is out of 100%, homework is worth 20 of that, right? So that's kind of like 20 grades of 95 and 40 grades of 85, 10 grades of 100, 30 grades of 97, and divide that by 100, right? That's kind of what you're saying. You're saying if you're adding up and dividing by a number, you're saying that 20 of those were this. It's kind of weird, right? The way I do it is I just say, okay, well, this is 20% times 95. 40% times that, 10% times that, 30% times that, and then you just add them up and that is your grade. So this is what we do. We go equals. If I didn't have the percent in here already, I would take 20 divided by 100. So I would make this 0.2. But I already have the percent in there. So I'm just going to click on that. I'm going to go Shift 8. That gives me times. And I'm going to click on my 95. If I hit enter, that gives me 19 because 0.2 times 95 is 19. I'm going to do the same things for this. I'm going to go equals, click on my 40, times, so Shift and 8, click on my 85, and that gives me 34. I'm going to do that all the way down. So I'm just going to, I don't want to have to keep typing. I'm going to click and drag because that's the whole point of Excel. Okay, so I have all these numbers, right? So now for my final grade, so I guess I'll call it final. I'm going to call it semester grade. No, I'm going to call it 9 weeks grade because I don't want to call it final. I'm final grade. You know, it's not a final exam, right? It's just a final grade. Let me move this over one so it doesn't interfere. So my final grade then, all I do is I equals sum, and I add these up. So my final grade for the 9 weeks is a 92.1, or the 6 weeks, or however long your grading period is. So that would be my final grade. It would be 92.1. Well, so given this, like if these are the same thing, so like let's say we're in the next 9 weeks and I didn't do as well on my homework, I got a 90, but I got a 95 on my tests. Well, now, like everything else is the same, now it bumps my grade up to a 95.1. So once we have it in as a formula, since we didn't actually, like on all of these, we just referred back to cells. We didn't say 0.1 times 100. We said G5 times H5. So this one times that one. So since we referred back, then if I change any of these or any of these, it automatically updates my grades right here, and it automatically updates my final grade. So that's a good thing. Now, another place this comes into play is at the end of the semester, because at our school, what we have is their first 9-week grade counts as 40%. Our second 9-week grade counts as 40%, and our final counts as 20%. So usually, the main question that I get is, okay, well, if I have this for my first 9 weeks grade and I have this for my second 9 weeks grade, what do I need to get on the final to get a 70 or a 75 or an A or whatever? Well, we would just take this and we would do the thing. So like, let's say you got 90 on your first 9 weeks. You slacked off on your second 9 weeks, and then you completely bombed your final. You got a 60. And you're going, oh, man, what am I going to actually get? Well, okay, so my semester grade, this is a weighted average, right? I'm going to go, I can move this over one. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to go equals this, Shift 8 for times this. And I do that for the next one and the final. Okay, so I have that. And now all I do is I add them up. So my semester grade then is that. Now I can leave it as, like, if I'm wanting to know what I need on my final to pass, I could input this, I could play around, but you know, I mean, this is math. We can always just rearrange the formula, and I'll show you that probably on a different type of a video. But so if I got this, so I got a 90, a 75, and a 60 on my final, I would still get a 78. Let's say you got a 90 on the first 9 weeks, 95 on the second. Let's say you got a 0 on your final. You just didn't even show up. In that case, you would still pass with a 74. Let's say you're like, okay, well, what if I get a 50? You get an 84. So you can play around with this, but this is weighted averages, and this is how to make Excel do weighted averages.